What I'm about to show you now is a video of a Canadian meat processing factory. They're processing halal meats for Islamic people. They're only allowed to eat halal meat. I'm not sure if that applies to other vegetables and stuff, but I know it applies to meat. They have to butcher animals in a particular way. Either way, so what's going to happen is this factory worker is going to find evidence of E. coli, I believe it was, and present it to the manager of the factory, who just ignores him and fires him.
CBC News has learned that one of British Columbia's largest meat packers covered up a food safety scare. The company discovered a potentially dangerous and deadly strain of E. coli in some of its meat. No illness was reported, but it took months before any of it was recalled. Kurt Petrovich now with this exclusive investigation.
He says he wants to come in from the cold to shed light on why one of BC's biggest beef and lamb slaughterhouses was shut down last fall. Daniel Land was in charge of quality assurance, regularly providing samples to a lab for testing before meat was shipped to halal grocers and restaurants around the province. Last September, Land showed the plant's manager a test indicating E. coli 0157.
He said, "This does not leave this room, and I don't want nothing to do with, I don't want nobody talking about this." He crumpled it up and threw it into my garbage can.
Land says he then went to the federal inspector at the plant.
She cried because she says they're covering it up. I says, yes. And she said, same old story.
Still nothing happened, and Land says he was fired after complaining about the cover-up and other problems at the plant. Eventually, Land called the Canada Food Inspection Agency himself. 10 days later, the agency issued a recall for meat that left the plant 2 months earlier.
We had a test. We didn't handle it properly. And, you know, we're apologizing for that.
But the plant manager hid the test, he says, because he thought Land may have tampered with it to sabotage the plant.
I went along with the decision at that time to not go to CFIA, but we should have gone to CFIA.
Bilka says some at the plant have been disciplined, some were let go, but the plant manager who buried the lab test has not been fired.
The plant says subsequent tests revealed not a trace of E. coli. 600 samples examined by inspectors also came back negative. Land denies he tampered with the test. The CFIA says Land's allegations are being investigated.
I wish I could say I was totally shocked, but I'm not.
This federal inspector says what Land saw happens more than people realize, but the plant's excuse rings hollow.
They have covered the tracks so well that it's impossible now to determine the damage. And, you know, if from a cynical perspective, you could say that was their intent.
The CFIA allowed the plant to reopen last month, but the owners gave up their federal license to process meat and got one from the province instead. They say it's a business decision that will save them money. Under provincial meat regulations, the job Daniel Land did, looking over people's shoulders, isn't required. Kurt Petrovich, CBC News, Red Deer.
I really can't believe that this happens so often, although I can. I mean, we have a capitalist for-profit system. The only care is for money. When the only variable is how much profit that you can make that enters into your equations, compassion and taking care of your community and helping your family, it just doesn't become a part of the equation. So, I think it's just ridiculous, you know, that he went to his boss and they fired him. They didn't even look at it, they just fired him. And then the guy had to go and call the Canadian, you know, food board to have something done about it. It's just really ridiculous. You know, we shouldn't be relying on these for-profit jerkwads, you know, for what we imbibe into our system, what we're, you know, ultimately dependent on to survive. We should be having our own system of permaculture gardens, you know, everywhere throughout the world. Why can't we have just tons and tons of permaculture gardens that just grow food for free or at a very small government subsidized rate where you could have people working on it under strict regulative conditions, which are not subject to any kind of privateership from some corrupt entrepreneur who's trying to sell you fucking meat with E. coli in it and doesn't want to freaking tell the food inspecting board because it would risk their company. It's ridiculous. This food needs to be government subsidized or people subsidized, one or the other, but it needs to be in the hands of the people and not in the hands of private banksters. And I think that we're going to see this in the near future. I was just talking to one of my friends who was interested in helping me with this Earthship project, and he was saying how that there was the story of some lady who she had gotten some land from somebody, just got permission to use like a couple acres of land off of someone's property, and she started cultivating food, and she started selling the food to the neighbors, and the neighbors would give her $1,000 for a whole year's worth of food. And she was in business. She gave the couple $1,000 to the lady she rented the land from, and there you go, taken care of. You just have to use your imagination. I feel in the future, the other thing that we were saying, I was talking to this guy, and we were saying is that in the future, in the near future even, commodities are going to start rising, and they have been rising. The investment opportunity in commodities or basic foodstuffs has been rising, and it's going to continue to rise. And it's a good place to put your money right now. I've been seeing that on Max Kaiser, said the same thing. Max Kaiser is a really genius investment banker and trends forecaster, and he said the same thing. So it might be a good idea to start looking into it, because in the future we're going to have to go somewhere for our food, and it's not going to be to these assholes.